Dzień dobry, nazywam się Błażej Hrabkowicz, to jest 61. Krakowski Festiwal Filmowy. Jest z nami kolejny reżyser, kolejny gość, twórca. Here with us, the director of Descent into the Maelstrom, Jan Verdoorn.
Very good. Nice to be
Yes,
here.
that was because we were wondering if I can pronounce your last name correctly.
Well, I think
that is out of the way. Now I can call you Jan. Can I?
Yes.
Yes.
My pleasure.
So Descent into the Maelstrom, it has a lot of at least two strong cultural references. The main thing, of course, is the Philip Glass music, which you use in this film, which is basically a sort of for me, a music essay based on this piece of music. But there's also, of course, Edgar Allan Poe's story you mentioned. How important were those two things for you, especially the Poe story, because the Glass music was obviously important for you because you made a film out of it. But this is the tradition, sort of the Maelstrom literary cultural tradition. How important is it to you, and was it important before you started to make this film?
The reason I started making the film was because I was watching a lecture by a French philosopher. And he was talking about Brexit. This is a couple of years ago. And he said that if Brexit happens for the English, they're looking for, or the British, they're looking back to a time which is mythical and doesn't really exist. And if they get what they want, it's going to be hell for them, which I agree. That has proven to be true. And he said it'll be like a descent into the Maelstrom, the short story by Edgar Allan Poe. And I thought, I've heard of this. And I rushed to my bookshelf and I found the short story and I read it again. And to my surprise, it's set in Lofoten, which is in the north of Norway, which is where I made my first feature film. So it was like, oh, Edgar Allan Poe has written a book from Norway and from this part of the Arctic I know very well. This is amazing. We have to do something with this. So originally my intention was to tell something about the chaos of Brexit through the work of Edgar Allan Poe, but then
from Brexit through Edgar Allan Poe to Philip Glass.
To Philip Glass, exactly. Well, it's a strange journey. But when I was researching, I realized that I found that Philip Glass had composed a piece based on the Edgar Allan Poe story, and I thought, well, this is too good to be true. We have a Kinder Egg of great ingredients. But the interesting thing about the Philip Glass piece composition was that it was done for the Australian Dance Company in the 1980s in Adelaide, and the recording was destroyed. It didn't survive. So this piece is kind of a lost piece. He did record it himself in the 80s with his Philip Glass ensemble, but it was a very kind of 80s recording. I think it was basically just to kind of document it, but it wasn't that great, if I could be allowed to say that. It sounds really 80s. Synths and bass and stuff, and I was thinking, well, this really deserves to be, pimped up and made because it's a great piece, and I think it's probably the piece that's been lying in the back of his drawer forever. So I was asking around, and then I found out that there is a philharmonic from the Arctic, which is called the Arctic Philharmonic, and I asked them if they would like to recreate this piece for the full orchestra. And we arranged it.
Because if I understand you correctly, there was no recording, but the composition written down in notes that existed.
No, there was a recording. The composition is written down in notes, but there was a recording made in the 80s by Philip Glass Ensemble, which was it's kind of a sketch. I felt that it was more like a sketch than a proper recording, if I can be allowed to say that. So we wanted to kind of return it to its or play it in its glory, because it's a huge piece for the full orchestra. So this is what we did. And at the same time, my idea was to take the orchestra, and they're only across the sea, not far from where the short story is written. And it's on a big mountain in the Arctic Circle. So I wanted to get them to climb the mountain and play the piece at the top of the mountain. That was my Fitzcarraldo crazy idea.
Yeah, that I immediately thought about Werner Herzog.
yeah, that's kind of, It was one of, and we had a lot of adventures on the way. And we took an old boat, and the boat hit a storm, and we were thrown every which way. But it was like a couple of people, well, more than a few people thought their last second had come. It was quite a dramatic process.
You had your own descent into the Maelstrom.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I thought, well, we're either going to survive, we're not going to survive, but that's it. We survived, as you see, but it was pretty hairy for a while.
Yeah. So, well, we saw the film, so we know that you abandoned the idea of putting the orchestra on top of the mountain. But if Philip Glass composition is one thing, Edgar Allan Poe story is another thing. But as this is, of course, a film, which is a visual medium, so you had to find some kind of images to go along with this music. And what was the process there? Because I really think that you tell a very coherent story with images also. And it's pretty far from Brexit.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
See, because we have this wonderful piece of music. We have this short story by a master.
Yeah.
We have this amazing landscape in the north of Norway in the Arctic. These are three very rich elements. And I was very worried that if I just threw them into the pot, I would get a stew that didn't have any focus. It would be just a very rich dish.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have the focus I was looking for. So I had a lot of thinking to do about how am I going to make this also into a visual medium, as you see that as you say, how am I going to tell this story? And it took a little while, and then I suddenly gelled for me because I saw the film Night Train from the 1930s, which is a very famous documentary of a train at night sorting mail in England. Black and white. It's got music by Benjamin Britten. It's W.H. Auden does the rating. It's got all the very strong elements, but it's simply just a black and white tale of the mail going from London to Glasgow, and they're being sorted at night. So it's not really, you wouldn't think, and it was commissioned by the British Post Office. So it's a fantastic film, but it's hard to say why. And then I was reading a book by a famous editor, and he said in the book that this is one of the greatest pieces of propaganda ever. And I thought, well, how can a film about...
In what way it is propaganda?
Well, this is it. The reason, obviously, when you think about it, film was made in 1936. It's from the island of Britain, which is any second soon is going to enter a huge storm. Everybody knows it's coming. So what and this film was a success around the world. So what the English do, very subtle way, is they show Britain at its least aggressive. They show Britain as a quiet, and wonderful, beautiful island where the trains go on time, not a hint of aggression. And they presented Britain to the rest of the world. And then on the other side of the coin, you have Leni Riefenstahl in Germany with a totally different approach.
Yeah.
And if you present... And if you
definitely different approach.
Yes. So if you present the one to the world and the other to the world, which one would you choose?
Yeah.
And it's a classic show, don't tell. It's so subtle. It obviously is propaganda, but you don't think about it because it's so subtle. And that just gave me the freedom. Is like, okay, I don't need to make this incredibly obvious story, but I can just show, don't tell. I show the lives of these people in the north of Norway, living their lives in the shadow of huge nature and surviving against, high odds. And it was just, and I'm showing, the film is scripted. I do have a story I'm telling, but I was very happy to be able to not have the pressure of having to tell an obvious story. I could just show these people's struggles. And of course, this part of the world is under threat from pollution, oil boring, drilling and stuff, and global warming. It's under threat from a lot of things. I think, just show people what it is and they can make their own decisions. Do we want this place to survive the way we're looking at it in this film?
That was my impression also when I was watching a film, that this is actually about also about relationship between man and nature.
Exactly.
And also in a way that man sort of coexists with nature and has to coexist in a way which allows him to survive, but also a man who explores nature, who exploits nature in order to survive. So this is for me the main thing of your film.
Yes. No, it is. In the book, it's a tale of two fishermen brothers, and their ship or their little boat gets pulled into a maelstrom.
Edgar Allan Poe story, yeah.
Yes, in the book, in the short story, and it gets pulled down, and one of them, he is tied to the ship. He is tied, and he goes down, whereas his brother, he grabs hold of a barrel and he pops up at the surface. So he survives. So, in a sense, you could say, in a metaphorical sense, you could say that the people who are clinging to the large institutions are not going to survive. It's the people who have seen the possibility of being more limber or more agile in a smaller scale. They're the ones that survive. And in this islands of Lofoten, which is, you know, it's incredibly, it's -30 in the winter, and the sun is on all day. It's an environment in which dwarfs the human being, but the strength, and this is a really bad phrase, but the power of the human spirit, to reference Riefenstahl, is the thing that survives. It's a kind of circle.
We have Brexit, we have Poe, we have Lenny Riefenstahl. Which
well, I think
I don't territory, but I understand what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
she was a filmmaking genius. You know, all the other things aside. So,
yeah, no, it's not. It has no real reference to Riefenstahl apart from something I don't want it to be. So
yeah. I know. I understand. But I'm just saying that, you know,
that's fine.
she was a technically very gifted director, and although she used that to as we mean, shall we say, controversial ends and goals, but
a bit,
a bit, just a tiny bit. The film and the music. It's also what I found interesting is that your film is very much connected to the Philip Glass piece, and it is present in the film all the time. The music. What did you, when you were making the film, or, you know, inventing the film, did you consider doing, for example, a longer film where the Philip Glass music would come up and then disappear for some periods of time?
Yeah.
Or and if so, why did you decide in the end that this film would be very strongly connected to the Philip Glass music, that this would go on? The music will be in the film every second.
Yes, it was respect for the music. I felt that the piece was the main focus. The piece had been brought into the light again, and I didn't feel that I had the right to interrupt the music or to. I'm a musician myself, so I have a very strong respect for musicians' music, and I felt that I didn't have the right to interpret or interrupt or pass his music in any other fashion than he himself had written it. So it was for the respect of the music. So that was, I mean, obviously, of course, we could have faded it in and out or put pauses in between the different movements, but I chose to do it exactly as it was. And that gave me some structure. So that was a decision I made very early. So that was not really a difficult decision. Once you made that, then we knew how to proceed.
Yeah, because if you decided to do periods of film without this music, then the Philip Glass piece would be sort of become an illustration to the image, and sort of would be have a function of enhancing the tension and whatever, and all the things that film music does in cinema, and I guess that is something you wanted to avoid.
I really wanted to avoid that. I didn't want it to be a soundtrack. I wanted it to be the main focus.
Yeah.
So no, it's a very pulsating piece, and the piece in itself creates emotions and it creates feelings, which I felt I'm not qualified to try or to go. I wanted the experience you get when listening to the music to remain as it was. And when you see the film, my intention was people to leave the cinema with the feeling of the taste of salt water in their mouth and the wind in their hair, that they had quite a energetic and experience, that they've been through something. And I think that's what happens. People say the same thing. You know, I've seen the film quite a few times now, and I leave always feeling quite drained and quite tired, because I've been through quite a heavy experience. Yeah. So I wanted to have the music do that, and then with the addition of the visual things, then and people can. One of the things I say about the film, although there is a strong narrative, it's not immediately obvious. Mm-hmm. So I do say to people, don't get too tied up with the narrative. Don't try and look for a narrative, because it's human nature to try and find the narrative here. If you just kind of lay back and just let it hit you and experience it. Yeah, just wash over you and let it experience the way you want. If you want to focus on the music for a while, fair enough. If you want to focus on the visuals for a while, but just experience it as more as almost like a tactile experience. Mm-hmm. Just have the waves come at you and crash on you and let it wash over you, as you say.
Yeah. In terms of editing and the rhythm of the film, did you decide that the edit and the rhythm of the images would be derivative from the music, would be derived from the music, that the music sort of sets the rhythm of the images? Was that your approach?
That was our approach, yes. It's a kind of a chicken and egg thing. We also put the different seasons to the different tones of the different movements. So yes, the rhythm decides, but then it suddenly becomes calm. And you can have counterpoints. You can have like calm music with very strong visuals, and so we played around. But obviously, if you put a rhythm in the editing which is counter to the music, it'll be unmusical. Mm-hmm. So the film is a very musical film. You know, the edits and the cuts will play in sympathy with the rhythm of the music.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you would agree with me. You're a musician. I'm not, but I always felt that. A lot of times we say that cinema has a lot in common with photography, with painting, and so on. But I always felt that cinema has a lot in common also with music, in terms of what we are just talking about: editing, rhythm, structure.
Yeah, I really agree, because I've spent a lot of time in the studio recording music. And I have an immediate reaction to something that's out of tune, out of rhythm. You know, if you hear something that's off, then and that's the same with the film. When you're editing or when you're watching, even when you're recording or shooting, if a performance is a little bit off, then you kind of, I react to it the same way as I would to a musician playing a bomb note, or being out of step or out of music, you know, out of key or out of rhythm. So my approach to film is definitely very, very musical. So you want to be able to see the entirety without cringing and go, so you have to. It's a musical piece, yes, with strong visuals.
Yeah, it's also in a way a concert film, which is really an interesting choice, because you could have made the film only with Philip Glass music and the images and leave it at that. But you decided to show the actual orchestra playing the music, the Philip Glass composition. What was behind this approach?
Well, to quote a phrase from Leonard Cohen, "We're all workers in song." I wanted to show the musicians as well. Their process. It's not a huge part of the film, but it is there to remind you that these people are also working with the music. And of course, we have them out of their comfort zone on the island, trying to reach the top of this mountain. So we're including them in the process. They are part of the process, of course. When we hit the top of the mountain, this was in June, high summer, and of course it was snowing. And there was 30-second-meter wind, and there was a storm. In fact, it was such a heavy storm that caravans were being blown off bridges in this area, and we had a helicopter with us, which nearly decapitated the entire orchestra. There was kind of one of the probably the most scary moment of my life, watching a helicopter coming towards us in this strong wind. So it was dramatic enough.
That is an image. That is an image. The whole orchestra decapitated by a helicopter.
Yes, I was looking at it, thinking I was seeing the headlines in my imagination on the newspapers.
The newspapers you would read in prison.
Yeah. Well, it was probably the most difficult decision I ever have to make as a director. Is like, am I being entirely irresponsible right now? Should I stop the shoot immediately? And I gave it a couple of seconds, and before I had got the time to think, the helicopter had taken off. But Russian pilots,
yeah,
they didn't seem to be too afraid.
Yeah, maybe they. Not the first time, and not the most dangerous thing they ever done, I guess. For them, it wasn't really a shock. But yeah, it's also when I was watching the film and seeing the orchestra actually play the music, it really sort of corresponded in my mind with the people you show in the film. They are making things, they are working, fishing or whatever, and they do very physical work. And the fact that you show the orchestra reminds us that making music is also a physical work, not only conceptualizing and inventing melody structures and so on. Music has to be made. So this is an interesting sort of connection in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They are an integral part of the process, so I wanted to show them as well. I think they have their fair share, and also it's kind of the counterpoint between these fancy dress musicians and the rough landscape is kind of funny. It's nice to see them struggling.
Fancy dressed musicians in contrast with people fishing on a boat, for example. Although I think that if you seeing these musicians playing in the wind and sort of with water washing over them, that would be something spectacular.
They were in a good mood at the start of the climb, and then towards the end they were getting slightly more frozen, and because they weren't wearing any special protective clothing, they were just wearing their concert clothes, so they got really cold and wet and soaked through. And so at the top of the mountain, it was kind of, the atmosphere wasn't quite as good as it was at the start. But when they got down again, they were very, very happy because they'd kind of conquered this mountain, and they'd felt they'd done something quite strong. So it was a good atmosphere. It was a good memories.
Atmosphere of achieving something extraordinary. I understand that. Well, thank you for the film, and thank you for talking to us. Let's hope we see you in Krakow in person sometime in the future.
I really hope so, yeah. I'll have to be. Just invite me. As soon as I can, I'll come. I promise.
All right. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.